Hello, everybody, and welcome to Day 2 of E3 2019. I'm your host, Jack Gardner, and I'm joined today by Marcus Stewart, and Naomi Lugo, and Zak Wojnar. And today we are going to be doing what we did yesterday and the day before that. We're going to be recapping all the cool stuff that we're seeing going on here at E3, all the cool games, the interesting people, the weird little stories. And we're going to do our best to kind of encapsulate that for you. So, without further ado, Marcus, I believe you wanted to go first by popular demand.
Yes, I played some of that there Darksiders Genesis today. It was actually the last game that I played before the show floor closed down. This is the latest Darksiders. It was announced shortly before even E3 began, and it stars Strife. It was the last of the Four Horsemen to get their game, but War is also there with him. And the big deal with this game is that it's very different. It is a Diablo-style top-down dungeon crawler instead of the third-person action Zelda-y games that all of those other ones have been. And it's really fun. I'm a fan of Diablo 3 specifically, and I love dungeon crawlers in general. And this is a really good one of those. But what's cool is that it still retains a lot of that Darksiders DNA in terms of the combat. The combat is very good. It's very this is a somewhat overused term in gaming, but it's very visceral, very stylish. You know, you're going around, you're doing some cool melee attacks. But the big thing with Strife is that he uses firearms. Like he has 2 dual pistols as well as a shotgun, and you know you can control those like twin stick style, as well as just hitting the buttons, but they play really well. He's got like kind of God of War-ish executions that you can hit on staggered enemies. There'll be like a little prompt, and it'll do a cool little stylish murdering thing. And yeah, it looks nice. Like the world's like, you know, it's that Darksiders look, which I've always thought Darksiders really cool world design. And character is a really cool looking game in general. I like the art direction for those games. And it translates nicely to a top-down game. But I think what I took away the most is that it's kind of like they just took those existing games and just changed their perspective a bit. It still kind of, in a weird way, feels like Darksiders. Still got the platforming mechanics. It's cool. I like it a lot. And it's coming later this year. I don't believe they've nailed down the date, if I remember correctly, but I know it's 2019. But yeah, I'm happy. I'm excited to play more of it.
I've always wanted to play the Darksiders games, but I haven't. Were you under the impression that this would be a good place to start?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I would say yes because it's completely different from those other games design-wise, so it's not like playing those games will prepare you for it in terms of gameplay. Story-wise, I don't know what the stories. I haven't played 3 yet, but they are one big story. So I'm assuming that this continues whatever maybe narrative was left off in 3. I don't know where it is, because even Darksiders 2 doesn't take place after Darksiders 1. It takes place during Darksiders 1. So I don't know what the deal is with the story, so maybe? But I'd say mostly, like, you're not going to get an impression of that series playing this because it's so different than what those other games are. You know, it'd be like playing, like, to use Zelda, since those games are very much like Zelda. It'd be like playing, I don't know, Link's Awakening because you wanted to play Breath of the Wild, and you're like, well, no, but yes, I guess. You know what I mean? So, play it. It's fun. Play it because it seems to be a fun video game.
Thank you, Marcus. Let's see. I went to the Bethesda booth and I played 2 games. There was a lot of talk about the free trial for Fallout 76, and how I decided to skip the free trial and just buy the game because it was on sale this week. But I did get a little bit of a free trial because I played the Nuclear Winter Battle Royale mode in 52 players. I'm not sure quite how many there were, and they're squads. They're teamed up in teams of 4. So 52 players, that's what, 12 teams? No, wait, 13 teams. 13 teams? Math. Thank you, Naomi, for the confirmation on that. And I gotta say, I had a little bit of a good time. Like, it's weird, but interesting because you kind of, anyone who's played the Fallout games know that while you're free aiming, it's impossible to hit anything that's far away. So everyone basically just ran towards each other and fought, and it was a different feel than what I was expecting, and a lot of fun. Then I played Wolfenstein Youngblood, and I was partnered up with a person who probably had not played a Wolfenstein before, and he died many, many times, and I had to revive him a bunch of times, and it made me feel cool because I didn't die, and I was like, oh man, I'm good at video games, yeah. But that, it's Wolfenstein but co-op, and one thing that I thought I wouldn't like, but I wound up not having a problem with, was that most of the enemies have health bars above them, and some enemies have a lot of health, kind of RPG style, and you level up as you get kills and get ability points that you can spend, although we didn't spend them in our demo, but that is part of the meta of this game, which will hopefully lend it some replay value as your characters become stronger. Maybe going back, doing a second playthrough, New Game Plus style. Didn't get a huge impression of it, but the co-op seems to work well. Like, there was a cool bit where we had to both activate a terminal and get the code from the other. And like little things like that where you don't really have to communicate, but you do have to work together. And naturally, I can confirm you do have to work together to open a door. It wouldn't be a co-op game, two-player co-op game, if you didn't have to work together to open a door. It's kind of amazing that all these single-player games, the doors are just weak enough that one person can carry them. But in co-op games, the doors are all much heavier. But yeah, awesome. Shooting Nazis until they blow up. There's nothing more satisfying than that. Wolfenstein Youngblood.
You guys both saw some really cool things today. I started my day. I spent a lot of the opening part of my day getting to know Allison, who is one of our national champions for Extra Life. We spent a lot of time just kind of talking about life. I talked to her mother a lot. It was really, really nice. It's always really cool to meet some of these kids, especially after everything they've gone through. And and the term kid here is used very loosely because Allison is like graduating high school and has like college plans and stuff, so it's very different from, I think, the default image a lot of people have in their heads for what a national champion is for Extra Life. So it was all really, really neat, and I appreciated just being able to talk with her and stuff. She's a really amazing kid. And after that, of course, I went to Bandai Namco, and I'm sure you'll hear a little bit more about this from Naomi, but so I won't go into too much detail about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, but I did like it quite a bit. But I also saw a little bit of Code Vein, and it's I think it's gonna find an audience, but also it's not exactly the Dark Souls like. It has a lot of similar mechanics, but how those mechanics operate is a little bit different. If you're familiar with Lords of the Fallen, it's kind of along that line of gameplay, but with an anime aesthetic and some more complicated systems in the background. That being said, I also saw a game called Rad, which is the Double Fine game coming out, being published by Bandai Namco, and it is really, really good. It's definitely an indie game you should have on your radar. It's basically a teenager in the wasteland. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic punk future. Really cool aesthetic. I enjoyed the gameplay that I had going on for a while. I never had a run that lasted longer than 10 minutes, so it's one of those games that definitely gets harder, but also feels more rewarding the more time you put into it. Um, and it's a roguelike, so every time you die, you start over in a new world. And the last game I saw from Bandai Namco was actually Man of Medan, which is a narrative horror game coming courtesy of the people who made Until Dawn. Super massive. Thank you, Zach. And while it basically Man of Medan is the first part of what's going to be a multi-part series in this kind of Twilight Zone-esque framing that Supermassive is making. And each episode kind of is introduced by this old man in a library who kind of gives a voiceover. And while it starts off kind of mundane, talking about what the story is going to be about, he slowly gets more sinister. And the story I played starts out with 4 friends in a boat, and they have a boat captain, and some inclement weather is coming in, but they aren't too worried about it until they are woken up in the middle of the night by a bunch of fishermen pirates. And these pirates threaten them, and this entire time you're playing the game, you're making choices, you're responding to quick time events, and as things progress, one of the taglines of the series is that everyone can live and anyone can die. So, it's very possible for your decisions to get characters killed off. I managed to make it through my entire playthrough of the first chunk of this particular game without anyone dying. And yeah, it basically the pirates capture these people, and then the storm hits, and their boat gets rammed into this old floating hulk of a ship, and that's kind of where things end. But from some clips they showed earlier, that's probably also where things start getting a little bit supernatural and a little bit creepy.
How are the faces?
The faces are actually really, really good. They did some close-ups. It's interesting because there seem to be like 2 different quality levels that the game skips through, and one's more pre-rendered than the other. But I couldn't really tell why there was that shift in quality, and I think maybe that's because it's just not finished yet. You know, it might have been, I could tell what was motion captured and what was pre-baked, but it was just yeah, I think there's a little bit of more work that's going to be done, but it wasn't like terrible at all, and everything looked amazing. Yeah, all the actors did a fantastic job, so that's definitely going on their reels. Just say that. Naomi, what about you?
So before I dive deep into Dragon Ball Kakarot, a game I saw earlier that day was actually called Super Crush KO, by a developer called Vertex Pop. And best way to describe that one is as a brawler, I guess, side-scrolling brawler. But what really sets it apart is its art style. And I was able to talk to the dev about how this went beyond like a simple aesthetic choice. It was about making it accessible for maybe people who had been kind of skipped by this genre in the past. And maybe because these games weren't necessarily made for them, they didn't necessarily fall into the genre rather. And that was a really interesting point, because obviously, you know, as a female, a lot of those games weren't tailored towards me. It was a lot of really masculine and just, not to say that masculine can't be appealing to women, but it was just a lot of games that were just very exclusive, exclusionary, actually. So it was really interesting, even in my short time playing it. I was having a lot of fun. I was really getting interested in getting better and learning the game. And every time I died, which I died a bunch, I was just picking it up and going right back into it. And this all isn't to say that I never liked any sort of side-scrolling beat-em-up games. It's just kind of a trend I've noticed within myself. So I had a really unique conversation with this dev about this kind of phenomenon that they stumbled upon almost in developing this game. Because from what I was able to gather, their art director is just someone who wanted to do something really colorful and bright. And the main character looks like Sailor Jupiter from Sailor Moon. And it seems like a simple thing, but really having a game like that be accessible to other people, it just kind of opened my eyes a little to how games in general have been exclusionary, but in like the most mild way, I guess. Because again, I'm not gonna be totally opposed to, hyper masculine imagery. It's just something that I'm not gonna naturally gravitate towards. Something I'm going to naturally gravitate towards is something that looks like Sailor Moon because it's rad as hell. So this game definitely appealed to me, and yeah, it's I really like what I've been seeing from developers in terms of accessibility and what that means to them. It's something I saw with Roki yesterday, and it's something I continue to see today. So it's really nice to be in an era where devs are thinking about how to make these experiences available to everyone and what that really means. And that doesn't mean dumbing down their games, because like the developer of this game said, it's something that can be beaten, but it's gonna be hard to master it. If you want to get those S ranks and really play the game well, it's still gonna take time, and it's still gonna be as in depth as maybe some of these other games are. So yeah, that was really cool to see. And then back to Dragon Ball Kakarot. And for those of you who might not be familiar with Dragon Ball Z, Kakarot is Goku's Saiyan name. And the reason they went with that was because this game is going to focus on the Dragon Ball Z story. It still seems like kind of a weird choice to me to call it Kakarot, but sure. I mean, it's fun to say, Kakarot. I mean, that's what Vegeta calls him all the time. It's deviating from the other Dragon Ball games, at least from Bandai Namco, where it's not solely focused on fighting, which is kind of funny since that's what Dragon Ball Z is, right? It's just a bunch of fighting. But they were able to expand the world into its kind of side quest format, where you can explore this world and go and do various things like feed Goku or go and talk to Master Roshi about being a perv. I don't know. Sorry. And fly around on the Nimbus cloud, and you'll still get fighting, of course, but you kind of build towards that. And so the fight that we were able to play in the demo was against Raditz. And so the fighting mechanic itself felt really great. The best thing I can compare it to is like Naruto. Oh shoot, I'm gonna forget. No, it's the Naruto series from Bandai Namco. It's like yes, Ultimate Ninja Storm. Thank you. Where it's a dynamic battlefield where you're not just stuck in the two-dimensional space, but you're able to move around the map. But I would say that this game pushes that even further and feels a lot more open than even that game does, because that game has its limitations. Where yes, you can move around in a 3D form, but you're still bound to like a circle arena. This game genuinely felt like you were open, like fighting in an open field. And it was genuinely satisfying to fight as Goku and charge up as Goku and shoot key blasts, because what this game is going to be focusing on is the story from Dragon Ball Z. So you're not getting the super crazy powered up Goku, you're getting the very beginning of when Goku is figuring out his origins. And then it looks like at least through the Frieza saga. So it's a game I'm definitely looking forward to, because I love the Dragon Ball series, and I would love to go back through the story and just be able to go through those iconic moments.
If someone didn't know Dragon Ball at all, do you think that this game would be a good starting point or even a substitute for the show?
If what is the Naruto game called again, Marcus? Ultimate Ninja Storm. If that's any indication of what they're going to do with the story, I would say yes, because those games are almost a complete substitute of the story. You get the major plot points, and you can get all of it within beating the campaign. So, yeah, I think you totally could get the full experience of Dragon Ball. It's just in an even more gorgeous format, because I would say that the game looks even better than Super does at this point, because it keeps that old art style, but it's like almost, I don't know, there's something about it, it's enhanced. It's not just like flat polished animation.
Yeah, one of the things I really enjoyed about playing that game was the environmental damage that happens as you're fighting. I don't know if you ever got to fight Raditz, Naomi, but it was a really fun fight. I enjoyed that quite a bit. And yeah, so it does hit a lot of the major plot points of Dragon Ball Z, but for people who have familiarity with all of that, there's a bunch of new stuff in it too, a bunch of side quests and side stories that never happened and are kind of like big what ifs. Like, what if Goku ran into some of these characters he's met as a child and, don't appear in Dragon Ball Z? And I think that's pretty cool and interesting.
Is the fighting in real time, and or is it a full-fledged RPG?
The fighting is in real time, and while it has some RPG-like mechanics, like for example, when you complete quests and you level up, and your attacks do more damage the more you level, and so there is like those RPG elements, but it's very much when you're actually in battle, it plays like an action game. Yeah, it's really cool. And for me, I also saw a game that I'm super excited about. I don't feel like I know a ton about it, but I did get to see it in action to a degree. Evil Genius 2, which is a sequel to a classic PC lair builder where you take on the role of an evil genius, a la kind of like a James Bond-y villain who wants to take over the world. It's really great and funny. The original, I love that game. But this new one looks like it's gonna be trying to polish that up and add a bunch of new stuff and kind of bring it into the modern day, because it's been like 15 years, 20 years. It's been a long time, and I'm really excited to see that again. Unfortunately, I couldn't record anything that the company rep said because of privacy, or not privacy, but secrecy reasons, I guess. But I can tell you that it was really cool and rad. And yeah, if you like those base building or like Planet Coaster or like building theme parks or whatever in games, this is definitely something that's right up your alley.
Real quick, I want to shout out to Monster Truck Jam. Shout out, which I saw just my first appointment today. I'm not a Monster Truck guy, and not that I dislike him. I've never watched it or been to them, but they're cool. Yeah, I know it's. I didn't say I didn't like it. Like I was like, oh, that seems cool, and I just never like actually gone to one of those things. But the game looks really nice. It's it's Monster Trucks. It's by Rainbow Studios with THQ Nordic. They've actually been around for a long time. They actually closed down when the original THQ went out, and then came back when THQ Nordic came back. It's actually a weird story that you don't really hear about developers like closing down and then coming back. But what's cool about the game is that it's not even so much the game itself, which is really neat. It looks awesome, but actually the development of it. The CEO was there talking about it, and he was saying that this is the first game that they've ever made where they had zero crunch whatsoever. And he made it a point to stress that, given that crunch has been a very hot issue in the last year or so in games. And he said that they set out from the get-go to like find a way to like make a game and have that be the mission statement. Like, we're not going to crunch on this at all. And talking about how they had to change their workflow and their expectations and their scope to reflect that. And they're like, we're happy to say that this is the first game we ever shipped where like we never did it once. And like the lead designer who was also there talking about, he's like, I can't remember the last time I worked a Saturday or Sunday, which is weird to hear. Yeah, and I was like, that's really, really cool. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out for that, because I think more people should know about that. Like, I know he said he's given talks at like GDC to try to help other developers maybe adjust their workflow and their like their deadlines and just their plans to like figure out how to make big games without killing their staff. Because he's also saying, like, I think our game is better because of that, because our staff weren't shells of human beings by the time it was out. Because the game actually drops this month, like at the end of the month. But yeah, I think that's really cool. That's I think it's Rainbow Studios, I believe it is. But Monster Truck Rally, Monster Truck Jam. If you've been on the E3 show floor, you probably saw the Monster Trucks outside, as well as Gravedigger in the South Hall. And you have to say that because every radio ad for Monster Trucks always says Gravedigger. Gravedigger was there. And another thing I played was Zombie Army 4, co-op zombie killer game. I personally have never played the Zombie Army series, but I had a lot of fun with this, despite a bit of a power outage midway through that thankfully didn't last too long. But I got to play a bit of 4-player play. It's, if you played something like Left 4 Dead or maybe, I guess, World War Z, it's, you team up with your crew. You equip a bunch of different weapons and perks and items. You can change your character's appearance and taunts. And you go out and kill some Nazi zombies who are like more like zombified Nazis than Nazi zombies, because some of them still wield firearms and can kind of use them. But it looks good. It's a lot of fun. It's like I had a blast playing both with 4 players and with 2 players. And that's another game. I think that game comes out like the first quarter of 2020, if I remember correctly. But yeah, if you're a fan of that series, it seems like it's another winner in the works, it seems. So yeah.
I played a game that is already out, but is about to be completely overhauled in some aspects. Vambrace. It's developed by a very small, like single digits number of people are in the team. And it's out on PC now, but it's going to be coming to consoles soon. PS4, Xbox, and Switch. And they felt good showing it as something that's to come, because the combat system in this game is about to be completely overhauled. So people have compared Vambrace to something like Darkest Dungeon, where you're basically a roguelike team going from left to right and encountering things that kill you. And the combat system, the way it was explained to me by the developer, the combat system was fully designed and then stripped back to be simple and easy to use. And they ultimately decided after it came out that they wanted to add that stuff back in. That they wanted to make it deep and complicated in a way that would appease the hardcore crowd, and in a way that would make it a little bit. They're talking about toning down the difficulty a little bit. Was criticized a little bit, and also hailed because that's how difficulty works. Some people love it and hate it because it's so hard. And now they're working to smooth it out a little bit while making it deeper and more complex, and not just difficult, but more tactical as well. He said that one of the people who worked on the game, I forget what their nationality was, but the way that they translated it was, this is the combat redemption patch. And I thought that was a really good way of putting it. I got to play it for a minute, but just through some of the early tutorials, we mostly talked about the game. And, putting together something that is a 30-hour campaign with new things to do with only a 4, 5, 6-person team who operate all over the world. And, it's out now on Steam, but it's about to be updated within the next weeks. And then after that, it'll be coming to console. And I think it's one to watch for people who are into that kind of very, deep tactical RPG, dungeon crawler, with a really kind of striking Middle Ages-esque art style that I thought was pretty timeless. It'll look good on a small screen on Switch, but it'll also look fine blown up on your TV. A lot of hand-drawn art, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I don't really have anything else. Does anyone else have something they're dying to talk about? It looks like Naomi's gonna be the last one up.
Yeah, there's a dog about puppies I need to talk about. This game, it's an indie game that was at Indiecade, and it is called The Last Friend. Which sounds like a sad game about puppies, but the team made a really endearing backstory from what they could tell me. So, you're either in the future or the world has been invaded. I'm not exactly sure on that point. But there's an enemy out there that apparently uses dogs as food. And I'm getting faces from the team members here. But your job is to go around and rescue these good boys, and make a shelter for them. So the game is you going and rescuing these various breeds of puppies, and because they're the last friends and they need to be rescued. And the artwork is just the cutest, and it's very internet friendly. And actually, as a cool note, this was made by a team from El Salvador, and one of the devs there told me that this is the first game published by an El Salvadorian team that will be on the Switch, and that's pretty rad. So this team flew up from a different country to showcase the game at E3. So they've made quite a bit of strides to be able to be here and get their game on the Switch. So that was really cool. And another really cute note is that they are starting their Kickstarter very soon, and some of the tiers are just wonderful. So for a certain tier, you can send them a picture of your pup, and they can be featured in the end credits. And then there's another tier beyond that. You can send them another picture, and they will digitize your bestest friend in their art style, which is, again, very, very precious. So I just wanted to give that game a shout out because it is really, really adorable.
Well, that's it for day 2. We had a lot of adventures. We saw a lot of really crazy stuff. And I hope you do tune in for Extra Life at E3 2019, day 3, where we close it all out. And also remember to check out Extra Life's Facebook page, because that is where you will find our live streamed recap. It is much shorter and succinct and highlights some of the stuff we really like. Not that we didn't really like what we just talked about, obviously, but it's a different beast. So check that out. And with that, there are a couple other things you should check out, like community.extra-life.org, where you can find work that myself and these other 3 fine people have put up onto the website. And be sure to check out, of course, extra-life.org, where you can learn more about what Extra Life is and even sign up. And you should definitely do that if you're listening to this, because, come on, you can help kids by playing games. It doesn't get that much better. So do it. And we will see you on the flippity dippity. Thank you.